Good morning. That's always the wrong way to start.
Hello!
Hello! Hi, and welcome to the Academy Podcast. My name's Austin Parenti.
And my name's Aaron Mejias.
And thanks for tuning in. Today, we thought it would be fun to answer some of the questions that y'all have been sending in. I'm not from the South, but I just used y'all anyway, so that's fun. But we thought maybe this is something we could continue every couple of episodes or season. You know, we just stop and do a Q&A. Some questions will be based off the work that we are working through, in this case, Plato's Republic, and some are just random, get to know you, kind of, first date questions.
Yeah, we are just super excited about the support that we've been receiving for the podcast. And you guys have some fantastic questions and some less fantastic. And we just figured it would just be a fun little thing that we can do just in between, just to kind of break up the monotony of working through whatever book we're working through and answer some questions to kind of give back. So
now, unlike usual, Aaron will be the one guiding because he has assembled the questions on his nifty smartphone that he has there.
Well, these questions are for the both of us. And we just,
right. Yes, of course. It's not interview Austin time. That'd be very boring.
Yeah.
So let it rip. What do we got?
So I'm just going to open with this question. Why do we not have any women on the podcast?
I don't have any women friends. Who would we invite?
Why do we not have women on the podcast?
Yeah, I guess that's the question being asked at all major films. And you see in Avengers when they had like all the women Avengers stand up together and punch Thanos in the face, so that once and for all we could say, oh, there are women Avengers, so we're not in trouble anymore.
But there were always women Avengers.
There were from the very beginning. Good question.
Good question. Let's take that with I'm going to take that with a little bit more severity. I'll say this, and I think what the question is directed towards is more about adding perspective and having more of a round table discussion and, adding another voice. And I would say that Austin and I are more than happy to our intention and hope is to eventually add people into the show for interviews or to do special topics with them, not necessarily permanent guests because, it's our podcast, so we like to enjoy it to be us too.
We like control and power.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about.
But I would say that it's not that we're, obviously women have contributed greatly to the field of philosophy and continue to do so. And I would, we've had professors that are women and have been fantastic.
Dr. Ader, we talked about her a lot last episode.
And so we are, that is something we're going to be working on is going to be having people onto the show, and whether they're women or not, it doesn't really matter to us. We want the most qualified people speaking on our show for sure. And as for just adding more people on, so it would be super boring if I just lectured. And,
that's why I'm here.
And you're right. And it would be really boring if Austin asked questions and then nobody answered it. Would we add like a third or fourth person onto the podcast? Probably not, because I don't like people. So
Aaron doesn't get along with very many people.
I don't know if you could tell. All right. So next question, unless you wanted to add something.
If we are taking it as a suggestion, which it might just be an honest question, it is a fair suggestion that we will come across pieces in philosophy that would merit a woman's perspective. So far, it's been pretty
cut and dry.
Yeah, cut and dry, and it hasn't left me saying, "Oh man, what does a woman think about this?" I would assume same sort of thoughts, but there will come sections and topics that I think could benefit from that. So. Thank you for the suggestion.
Thank you.
Since we're taking it that way.
Thank you. So the next question I think would kind of relate to the first one would be, why did we start with the Republic? I think did I pick this?
Well, we were, yeah, no, yes, yeah, no. No, because I remember we said we could have started anywhere, but the Republic is like the first chronologically big work in philosophy. I think that.
Yes.
Now we're not going to continue working chronologically, but we figured if this was the West's introduction to philosophy.
Yeah,
Might
but
as well be
while
ours.
skipping over the pre-Socratics, because I think I figured that Plato was more of a household name, like Plato, Socrates. People kind of, at least people who are not necessarily familiar with
they've
philosophy
seen The
know.
Princess Bride or
Sure.
Bill and Ted's Most Excellent Adventure. You know,
I don't know those, but anyway,
Oh my God.
the I would say that you're right. It is like a big major work that we could really sink our teeth into. I think we're starting to regret that now because we're like starting a podcast and this is taking a long time to work through.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's the first major work.
I mean, you've also read it like 4 times
Right,
before this,
yeah,
so you were
exactly.
prepared.
Right.
And when I had read it, it was 4 years ago, and it was at the very beginning of my college program. So it was. I just didn't have a lot of context to take with me to understand its significance. And now coming back to it, it's really beautiful to see how many other philosophers pull from it. Selfishly, I have enjoyed using this as our first work.
Yeah, and I think the pattern that we're on now is that, so we've kind of agreed that I was the one to pick this one.
Sure.
And so then Austin's going to be picking the next one, and then I will pick the one after that, and so on and so forth. And we won't tell anybody what we're doing next.
Though we're open to suggestions. You can email us at the
But we're also
podcast@outlook.com. Yes, but we're also going to ignore all those and do what we want at the
Yeah,
end
so
of the
you
day.
can put in a suggestion, and if it happens to match with what I want to do, then we'll do that.
Yeah.
There you go. And then you can claim
Sounds
credit.
good.
Yeah, you can claim credit for it. But there's also philosophers that, as a side note, there are some philosophers that I am also kind of unwilling to bring on.
Are you unwilling to learn from the great Richard Rorty? Do you have a problem with him?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there are some. I think there are some that are overtly complicated for the sake of being complicated that I don't think would be beneficial to the podcast format. So I'm looking at you, Hegel.
Yeah.
Just absolutely, like we could, but it would be insane. Or even I would think a popular author, like let's think of C.S. Lewis. Like I would never have C.S. Lewis here on this podcast because he's not a philosopher. Like, and maybe that pains you for me to say that. But
No, you know,
he's not.
If we did, it would be like a select essay that was a good segue into it.
If.
Calm down. Anyway, yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay. Look at you guys asking questions that would just cause us to fight. Do you want to do a fun one, or do you want to do a?
Let's do a fun one. You know.
Okay. I don't have a fun one pulled up. Hold on.
Take your time.
Oh, here's one for. Here's a fun one. Was Avengers Endgame good?
Okay. Okay.
Not too much time on this one.
All right, yeah, I can make this short because I've been talking to my students about it for a week now. If you believe that art can be evaluated objectively, I think it was average. Now you have to accept that because we can't just talk about, oh, well, personally, I thought it was good. Personally, I thought it was bad. Well, personally, I'm not going to have this conversation, because it's worthless. So objectively, when you factor in the storytelling devices that go into cinema, which are theme/moral, aesthetics, acting, character, plot, music, and emotions, I think it hits some really strong beats throughout it, but I also think it does pretty poorly in some other categories, namely like plot cohesiveness, character development. It has it, but it's not the focus that I think it should be. So I would give it, like, in terms of, if you look at cinema beginning to end, you're judging it right there next to Citizen Kane and, The Room by Tommy Wiseau. I would give it like a 6.
Okay. I liked Avengers Endgame. Is it Casablanca? No.
That's right.
Is it Lincoln? No.
I did like Lincoln. I forgot about that.
It's not. It's sure as hell ain't Godfather Part 2 either. Like, but I don't want to. So a part of me says it's unfair to compare it to like classical movies because of like just the matter, like subject matter, like exactly how much can you pull from a comic book movie, and then that could call into question like, should we be making comic book movies like good film, or and so is it fair? And And, one part of me says, no, it's not a good film. And I'm not going to make excuses for it. But then another part of me is like, well, it's fun popcorn movie. I will say this about Endgame. I thought it was a satisfying conclusion to 11 years of Marvel movies that were either hits or misses for me, and people can debate those
About
all day.
half and half, yeah.
Right, but I think if you've been invested in those characters and you've followed that along, it was a good film for fan service. I think it did a good job of making it about the fan service. I thought the third act kind of dipped when they reintroduced Thanos, and apparently he's just as powerful with a big sword. There's no point in Captain Marvel existence whatsoever. But the first act and the second act I thought were really good. The really dour stuff, the character moments, the time travel, even though it was a bit wacky whenever you introduced that, I thought all of that stuff was quite fun.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to have those two operating opinions where you say objectively this and a little more subjectively, or I would say contextually.
Right.
But I want to caution, I know you understand this, but the people listening and mass consumers out there, we should be careful when we contextualize, because we can contextualize something to death. So I used this example with Aaron before. I said, okay, I'm sitting in this chair. I think it was with you. Well, is this a great chair? Well, it's made out of plastic, so it can't really be. So let's evaluate it on terms of it being plastic and this high. And suddenly you've created a rubric that literally is the chair itself. So of course Avengers is great if you are considering that it is an Avengers movie made with this budget, made for this audience. Well, duh.
Right.
So you have to be careful.
Exactly. So as an overall movie is 6.5, 6, maybe a 7 from me, maybe. In terms of an MCU film, 9.
Yeah.
9.5. If comparing it to the rest of the Marvel films that have come out so far. Anyway,
and we were paid to say that. It is a 9.5.
Mass checks.
So much money.
Here's a question for Austin, actually, just
for
to continue
me?
with the theme. Is there a film that captures the theme of the importance of everyone learning to be just? Is there a film that captures the theme of the importance of everyone learning to be just?
Okay, certainly, but it also depends on your definition of justice, which as I'm reading this, my definition of justice is completely reworking, and we get into that in episode 4. So my initial idea of justice was completely legal, or was people trying to resolve legal disputes and doing so in a way that administers goodness to good people and bad to bad people, which we already covered in the first chapter, in the first episode. That is not Plato's definition. So to answer your question from the initial definition, the more widely accepted definition, I think my go-to is going to be the 12 Angry Men, where one man works his ideas and concepts to push people to make a very just decision. But they each have to arrive at that point individually, whether through reason, emotions, or whatever was holding them back. It was a kind of cool film, so I'd look into that. Plato's definition being more like the harmonious soul, a person who the different components and desires and faculties of his soul are in order and harmonious with each other. Honestly, that could be really any movie about a good character growth, and that would be something like Casablanca, where you see Rick deciding to put away his initial emotional desires to be with whatever Ingrid Bergman's character's name is, in favor of doing what he has reasoned out to be right.
Okay.
Is that fair? You can answer this question too. It doesn't.
I don't know if I could.
Okay.
What film is most like people learning to be just? The importance of everyone learning, or learning the importance of being just.
And again, depends on are you going to operate using Plato's definition of being just?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one because you're kind of scrolling through all the films in your head and you're like wondering,
It makes you realize how shallow most films are.
well, yeah, I guess so. I guess that's true. Yeah, there's a lot of cautionary tales that I'm thinking of now, but
Yep. People failing to learn how to be just
Right.
until it's too late.
right. But the question is like where everybody's learning the importance of being just, and you wanna. I'll just give a quick answer. There's an old classic film from the 1960s during the epic era, like with the Ten Commandments and all, and Ben-Hur and all them. Barbarous.
I have not seen that.
Yeah.
You stumped me.
Yeah, that's one that I would say. The
You just said that
importance
because
of
no one's going to go watch that and prove
Exactly.
you're wrong.
Exactly.
No,
All right.
We'll take your word for it. Barbarous.
So fun or a podcast one?
That was a fun one. We could do a podcast one.
Why did you start the podcast, and what books are you most excited to talk about? There's some
Aaron-
deeper ones in here too, by the way. So
Okay. Aaron met me in a coffee shop
Yes.
that just opened recently and told me that he had this idea. And it's exactly what we're doing now, just going through major works of philosophy and
with a
trying to...
lot of tweaking that was
Yes,
done
yeah,
from then
yeah.
to now.
But I
for
think
sure.
the general purpose hasn't changed. It's
Yeah,
to
I know.
break down major works of philosophy to be accessible. The formats have changed.
Correct.
But I was initially really attracted because I struggle to read consistently, and I learned this past weekend as I was performing in that musical, and I was trying to read, and everybody was talking, and I was backstage, so it's not like I could hear the music, but I am an audible learner, and so what that means is like if I'm reading, that's visual. And audio is going to take the cake. And so if somebody's talking in the room or there's even a little music playing, I get distracted. And so what I was told by one of my friends there was try reading out loud so that I am taking this visual medium and making it audible. So anyway, all that to say is I was really attracted to this idea because it would give me the extra punch that I need to continue reading these great works and wrestling with them. But I also think we just have really fun conversations normally, and they normally tailor towards something philosophical or political or whatever.
So why not put it on the mic?
Right. Because, well, I think they're interesting, but, I'm talking. So, of course, I think I'm interesting.
I think Austin and I run into this all the time, where people are not interacting with great ideas. They're not, and I don't want to say that they're not thinking, but they're not thinking on the level where with the minds that we have are able to. And, it's funny because, I'll have conversations, or Austin will have conversations, or really any of us, if you're listening out there, you can have a conversation where you'll ask a question, something provocative. You're talking to somebody, and then, or when you're asking them, when you're going a bit further, you're saying, no, how are you? And then getting into, well, what does that mean to you? And what do you think of this? And having that honest discussion. And then it's always interesting because at the end of it, somebody goes, wow, that was really refreshing. That, I like thinking like that. I haven't thought about that. Or that's interesting to me. And I think that we're always yearning for something more in that realm. And I think that a lot of people are craving that, even though they don't necessarily know it yet. And I thought, I looked around and I saw a lot of philosophy podcasts out there that gave really good, I found one kind of podcast was we focus on one thinker. So I'm really inspired by Points with Aquinas by Matt Fradd. Matt Fradd, if you're out there and you happen to listen to this, I love you. You're a beautiful man, and I really hope that one day I get to interview you or you get to interview me, and you're fantastic. Anyway, and they focus in on the philosophy of Thomas Aquinas. Okay, so great. And, you can be Catholic, evangelical Christian, and atheist and agnostic and listen to that show. Fantastic. You're going to get the philosophy of Thomas Aquinas. even though Matt Fradd is openly Catholic. And then you have the other side where it's like really fun, like 20-25 minute segments, in where, you know, somebody's like, what is the philosophy of Nietzsche? Like, Nietzsche is Ubermensch, and then they just do a really quick bite on that. And that's great, because I think the podcast medium is for people who are just doing something on the go. They're driving to work, they're picking up something. And I'm like, not bashing that at all. It's great content. You're getting something out of it. I wanted both, and this is our like constant struggle. Where it's like, I want to go through and give due service to a book in specifics, and therefore do justice to a particular thinker, but then also make it where it's like that accessible, almost, I don't want to say we're fun. I think we're
casual.
kind of, when I listen to us, I'm like, we're kind of like an NPR. I think of like the Parks and Rec, thoughts for your thoughts.
Yes.
Very soft.
That's
what I wanted to be.
It's an ongoing battle, because I don't think any other podcast out there is doing quite what we're doing, trying to balance these two fields. And that either means we're way ahead of the curve, or maybe we're doing something wrong. So that remains to be seen. But we're going to keep trying it and see what happens. And that's why we're emphatic.
This is a cry for help.
No, that's why we're emphatic about like leaving feedback, though, because we genuinely don't know if this format really, really works for.
Yeah, well, people coming up to me, they say they like it. They say that they're getting, you know, and it's kind of like, you know, also pick your audience, like, because I mean, eventually there's going to be people out there that it's like, Academy podcast, they don't go deep enough for me, and I would be like, okay, and then nerd, and then there's that other segment where it's like, oh, an hour. I'm not listening to that.
Right.
Oh, 45 minutes? I'm not listening to that. And it's like, well, how much do you give up?
Right.
You know,
so
that's always...
We're going to try this, see how it goes, but... Yeah,
but that's
why
we started the podcast, I would say, is to get people thinking, engage in these conversations, and, you know, maybe just to influence somebody's life in that. But then the second part of that was, what books are you most excited to talk about? So...
for me, I'm a sucker for Cicero. I really, really love all his works. I just think it's a very unique time in history. He's not quite Platonic, you know.
Aren't all times in history unique?
Yeah.
Well, don't you sound dumb?
Yes, but it's such, I don't know. He was right on the crux of some major transformations in Rome. And so reading his ideas about honorability and on duties, but also countering that to like his book On the Nature of Gods or On Life and Death, like, I don't know. He's just really interesting, and I kind of have trouble pegging him down, you know, which is why I like him. He's so alive to me. That's one author. I could go on, so why don't you take your own?
What is a book that I'm excited to read, to cover on this show? I don't know.
None of them.
None of them. I hate
Marcus Aurelius. Say it. Say it.
We can't both pick Roman
We
philosophy.
could pick Stoics. So powerful. So docile. Marcus Aurelius writes a whole book. He's like, everyone is an idiot, and it's so annoying, but that's okay. Hang in there, Marcus. Talking to himself. So crazy. I love him.
It would be hard to cover the meditations. It would be very difficult to cover the meditations. I'm really actually excited to cover somebody like
Spit it out. Come on.
That just distracted me.
Tomorrow's too late.
Somebody like
Gandhi.
I'm just gonna say it. Karl Marx.
Firm.
I'm gonna say Karl Marx. I think that's gonna be a challenge for me.
He was the old pig in Animal Farm, right?
I don't know. Karl Marx, because he was such a bombshell in history, and wanting to cover that in a way that is, well, just to him as a thinker.
Because you're a raging capitalist. No, it's hard to not watch that with watch that. It's hard to read that and talk about it without immediately.
Yeah, I don't want to get too much into my personal takes on Marx.
Aaron's a very closed off person. So.
On this podcast, I try to be, and so So I think I'm giving too much of a hint as to what I believe about things, and I don't want to do that. I do think Marx is fascinating, and I spent a lot of time studying Marx, and I've read a lot of his work. I've read all of Das Kapital. I've read the Manifesto, a lot of Engels's works, in certain essays, and so I just find all of that really fascinating, and just getting into that and more than just communism, like as a political philosophy, but he had a lot to say about other things too. So I think that'd be really interesting. There are other people too, people that are more out there. Like I eventually want to do coverage on like the philosophy of history, like looking at like Fussell and some other like historians that, things like that. Something weird. I like, and
Suetonius.
You're just gonna give me naming Romans, so
one day it'll stick. Yeah, well, I've read Animal Farm, so we're just about even.
So let's see what else we got here. How about this? Has the success of your podcast changed you? When you're recognized in public, do you mind if your fans approach you and ask for an autograph, or would you rather they leave you be? I don't know. They're probably trolling.
Such bull crap.
Oh no. So we're not successful.
What do we have? Like 20 subscribers on YouTube?
I don't know. But I mean, I do have people. I don't think you've experienced this, but I mean, I've had people like talk to me about the podcast,
but not like total strangers.
No, not like me walking down the street.
I think that's what that was implying.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Someone runs up to you.
Yeah. So we're not popular, but if you're listening, please make us popular. Yes. And then maybe we'll come back and answer that question.
Yes. I promise to answer that question when somebody random approaches me on the street and says, Hey, you're the guy who asks questions in the Academy podcast.
And then they would ask you, hey, can I meet Aaron?
Yes. It's like, can I see your better half?
I'm joking. Let's see.
Boy.
Okay, so nothing there. Let's do a deeper one. What have we and this one was actually addressed to me, but we can both answer this. What have we encountered that challenges the pedestal that we put Plato on? So as to say that what have we encountered in his philosophy thus far that like, because we put Plato on, and we, he's such a titanic figure to us in the philosophy of the West. So, and we we definitely put him in high regard. So what have we read that really challenges the way that we think of him?
Yeah, you can talk about maybe what's coming, but for me it was what we went over with the education section.
Oh yes, really
made me go a little nuts, and maybe that's because I'm an educator right now. And whenever I hear about a book being banned or something being censored, part of me just freaks out, because I understand that censoring something might lead to a better output. But I think that means that really at the end of the day, it was the teacher's failure to communicate that taboo idea in an effective way that actually benefited the student. So yeah, that made me go a little nuts. That's a good point. We do. I think these big names that we have the honor of discussing. It's so easy for them to become these major, like demigods in our mind. But the reality is they were people, and they had no more capacity for good or evil than any of us did. Are being well. My tenses are bad.
Assuming we know what good and evil are. But
I guess we haven't gotten there yet.
Correct. I would say the lack of specificity in which Plato discusses really any topic. So like he only talks in very general, more broad terms. And I mean, he does. I mean, obviously Plato has a philosophy. I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm just saying that it's interesting to like learn Plato from, a textbook or from a lecture series or something like that. And then to really get down into it and start to read the swirling debates around certain points that he has to make about really anything. And then you start to realize that, wow, there are a lot of different interpretations in Plato because he left the door wide open. Yeah. And so it's kind of like, wow, we have this foundational thinker in the West who really didn't speak with much clarity on things that of great importance, like the soul, that, in episode 4 that we covered. Yeah. It's like there's not a lot there. For us to really to say he definitively says this. I mean, I think there are some thinkers that are closer to discerning the truth of what Plato has to say, but that really rocked me. And it showed me that it's, philosophy is not always airtight, especially not back then.
Right.
So I hope that answers that question. That was a good question.
Very good.
Let's do this one. What are our favorite and least favorite memories of each other?
Oh, gosh. I know what's coming.
Let's do unfavorites first, I guess. Yeah, we'll do unfavorites first.
We might have the same one.
No, mine's different.
Yours isn't the lion painting?
I have 2 unfavorite memories of you. I'm just kidding. I have one. It's not the line painting, though. You can do the line painting.
Okay, I'll do the line painting because I was so mad.
Okay, Austin has a dumb line painting of a lion.
It's not dumb. It's magnificent. It's so big, and I inherited it. And I carried it with me to every dorm that we had in college, and I put it in my office when I was in Student Gov.
And then we lived together, and nobody cares about Student Gov.
It's true. Including myself.
And we lived together over the summer.
Right.
In the apartment there on campus.
I flew back to New York to do a film internship in the city.
How was that? You hated that, right?
Monotonous work and not a lot of product from it, but it gave me perspective and all that stuff in hindsight. But at the time, I was not happy.
I could give you perspective, make you work at McDonald's.
So Aaron was left by himself to move our furniture from the summer dorm.
Well, Daniel was there, but then he also had to leave for some reason.
Yes.
He was only there for a little bit, and so I was basically moving everything by myself.
Yeah, you were moving everything by yourself, and you had a time limit or something.
Oh yeah,
and so he was out. He had moved all his stuff, and then I see on Instagram the guy who moved into our summer house, and he took a picture of the lion painting, my prized possession.
And he was he lambasted us. He was like,
yeah,
"Oh, you call this room ready?
He's just dumb people leave their stuff behind." And now I didn't really care that he was making fun of. Really, he was making fun of you because I wasn't there to help move. So I was like, I don't care about that. I care that Aaron left my lion painting.
Even though you didn't
tell me.
I could always get it. Well, I mean, because I was under so much duress.
I just thought that guy would steal it or throw it in the dumpster. So with hindsight now, of course, I understand how stressful moving is and how something could be left behind, especially something that doesn't seem very important. But I was mad.
Yeah, he was very, very mad at me.
And so I texted some not nice things that I feel bad about now.
It's okay.
But we made up afterwards, and we did get the lion painting back, and it's hanging above my bed now. But that was probably the most mad. I get mad about dumb things, like I don't know the last time I was mad about something that I should have been mad at.
Yeah.
Then there are other stories about that, but that's my least favorite memory, probably because of how I reacted, not so much your action.
So we'll go back and forth. So I'll do my own favorite. Yeah. Mine's a little bit easier than that. I think I walked in one day and we were living in the apartment in Merida Gardens, and I came in and you guys hadn't bought cleaning products or trash bags or anything, and I was constantly buying this stuff. And then you guys decided to not only fill the trash can with trash, you decided to fill the trash can with trash without a trash can in it, but then you decided to lean it up against the wall so you could pile more trash on it. I lost my mind. And you never clean the stove. You always cook with a lot of oil
everywhere.
And you always and I remember just being and so back in the day, in college, I worked as an RA and as an assistant resident director. So I had the power to find people. So then I just texted them. I texted the group, but I knew who it was. It was you. And I said, you guys have until midnight tonight to clean this kitchen, or all of you are going to be fined $75.
That's a lot of money, especially when you're in
Well,
college.
I could have, if I could make it more, I would have. I'm a very clean person, and that, like, I lost it. I was like, what? Okay, now for the favorites.
It's not like the best of the best, but it's pretty funny. We were, it was my freshman year and your sophomore year. We weren't really like close friends at the time, but it left such an impression on me that I said, I need to be this person's friend, because we would go and we would play Super Smash Bros. In our neighbor's room, Riley. And there was one night when he was setting the volume, because, one of the roommates was going to bed, and he put it on, I remember specifically, he put it on 37.
Oh, this story.
And that freaked you out so much, because it needed to be like
40 or 35?
35. There was no 37. And he said, he was so bold, he just stuck his foot out. He said, suck my big toe, Aaron. Suck it, and I will change it to 40. And you like looked at the controller, you looked at the screen like, is this worth it? And in that moment, you decided yes.
Yes, I did. It was worth it.
And then
I stand by my decisions.
There was a toe in your mouth, and then it was changed to 40, and it was so remarkable to me that was so important to you, that you would allow Riley's toe to be in your mouth.
No.
Oh man, that was marvelous. I was like, I need to get to know this guy better, because all I know about him is he plays Little Mac and Sonic, and and he puts toes.
I'm not
in
that
his
kind
mouth.
of guy anymore.
Not anymore. You've changed.
I'm not a bad guy.
So that's not like best of the best, I'm sure, but that's what's coming to mind right now.
My favorite memory of you, I guess, is more recent.
Oh no!
I hope your parents don't listen to this podcast.
Of course not. They don't support
So
me.
Austin's hanging out with me one day, and I don't know why you were hanging out. I guess, oh no, we were working on the podcast actually. It was at the very beginning. Oh yeah. And we went to Publix to go buy.
Yes.
And we went to Publix to go buy food, and some other, to cook with or whatever.
So I said, let me drive. Let me be the nice guy.
So Austin's always offering himself up, and that's great. And so he goes and drives, and he has one of those, like automatic key fob things.
Yeah, like click the button or
click the
whatever.
button and it locks in. So we're in Publix, and I forget what the context. Oh no, we were looking for something specifically, and we kept going down the aisles.
We were in every aisle
and then
twice.
you kept saying it was like, it's not in this aisle. It's not. And I'm like, hey, we gotta go. It's gotta be in the. And then so we're back in the same aisle, and you're like, and I'm like, oh, I think I was saying something. I forget, but I was saying something that it was making you mad. I said, oh, yeah, it's definitely not in this aisle. And you go, son of a, and then you like take the keys and you like dash them on the ground, like, and then they split open and it flies everywhere.
It shatters.
And I'm like dying laughing. I'm just laughing so hard.
I committed to this.
And then you went and then you put it back together, and then you're like, oh no, I don't think I can put it back together. And then so we're trying to put the key fob back together, and eventually we like force it, and then we go back and we can't open the car. And so I have to drive you all like 45, like an hour back to your house.
You drive me an hour back to my house.
So that you have to get up at
sick father.
You have to get up like 6 o'clock in the morning to drive back to Publix to get you back in the car.
with the extra key, and we still don't have a spare key. And on those Nissans, it's like $100 for every key you get. So yeah, I don't know if it was worth the joke, but man, did it have us laughing the whole night.
That is one of my favorites. That was fun.
So
next question. We have quite a few. Not that much anymore, but we did have quite a few. Let's see. Oh, actually, we have a question from my boss at my full-time job.
Boss man, Tyler. Was that right?
Ryan.
Oh,
so no.
Okay. There's a Y and an R. What's his question?
He asked, is the proper orientation of the soul even possible?
Oh. Now we're talking.
Tune in a few weeks, Ryan, and find out later. Oh no.
No, we could give him something. I think as humans we know instinctively that perfection is not achievable. dare I say. At least that's what I believe, and I feel like most people I've interacted with understand. My own student said today, I was like, how'd you think your film turned out? They said, well, you can always do better, you know. But I think you can certainly go from 30% to 80%, you know, in anything, proper soul orientation, countenance, just controlling your attitudes and building a more harmonious spirit. I think you can definitely take great strides. Can you ever hit that 100% mark where you're perfectly ordered? I don't think so. But that doesn't mean it's not worth aiming for 90, 95, 98, you know?
Yeah.
Well, what do you think?
I think that the question of the soul's orientation versus the achievement of harmony in the soul should be treated as two separate questions.
Okay.
And I think that I would say this, to not enter into the whole like battlefield that is like that question basically, because it is actually, because you know, you may be wondering as a listener, why is it so difficult for us to answer this question?
Well, you try and answer it.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
I would say that once you've oriented your soul so that reason rules over all of your faculties, and that you have truly decided to pursue wisdom and truth and knowledge in and of itself, because it is good in and of itself, then I think you have accomplished far more than most people ever have. That may be a dig on mankind. Sorry, mankind.
Wow.
Or humanity for the more,
modern
listener. So I would say, yeah, that you've accomplished more, and the very fact that you have decided to orient yourself and to make that a conscious effort. I'm not even going to get into whether or not it's achievable for you to do so, because I would say that to not really worry yourself about it too much, and to say that specifically to my boss, who will hopefully listen to this episode and say, hey, just orient yourself. And the very fact that you've done it and you're making a conscious effort towards that means that I think that reason will get you there.
Powerful. No, that is good. That's good. I like that.
All right. Okay. Wait, there was another. Has Plato challenged us in ways where we are uncomfortable?
I don't think I'm a very easily uncomforted person.
Okay.
Let me skim really quick, because that's a good question. I mean, of course, like we talked about, the things that I didn't like, the hard pills to swallow being the censorship in education, the class distinctions, right? Where he talks about, well, if you're born bronze, you're born bronze and stay there, those are some hard pills to swallow for my 21st century mind. I wouldn't say I'm uncomfortable reading it, but that's hard stuff. Those are my two initial thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. Plato talks about killing children by exposure.
That sounded like a great
thing. He does talk.
Sarcasm.
There is a section where he talks about engaging in infanticide.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little uncomfortable with infanticide.
I don't blame you.
I think that's fair. Yeah. Yeah,
but it's one of those things where, like, it takes it takes humility to continue to read and try to glean the wisdom still and understand, because it's so easy to just get turned off by a book like this because it doesn't match my 21st century idea of the world, right?
Sure.
And so that's the beautiful thing here that we're trying to challenge ourselves to do is say, wow, he says some horrible things about infants and women and whatever, that we would deem horrible. And maybe they are, but we can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Is that the metaphor?
Yeah.
I hear that all the time. People like read, who's the one who had slaves other than George Washington? Was it Plato too?
Jefferson.
Like
everybody.
Right. Anybody who owned slaves ever in history is a dummy and we shouldn't listen to their wisdom. Like, I don't hear that often exactly like that, but no, that doesn't make sense. There's still great things they can contribute. Just like I hope somebody, at the end of my life, somebody doesn't discredit every good deed I've ever done because of the many bad ones. It's just
no. You're right.
It feels immature.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, like there are plenty of philosophies that we will eventually interact with that we would say have a direct link to the suffering and the death of many people. Mm-hmm. Heck, even Plato can be regarded as one of them, as being like a proto-fascist.
Yeah, we've seen those arguments.
And it would make you a little bit uncomfortable. But we're not cowards.
Firm.
So, let's do a simple one. How much time does it take to research for one episode?
Well, for me, I do absolutely nothing. I just sit here, I read, and then I ask questions.
Yeah.
You, on the other hand.
Yeah. So how it works in the dynamic, Austin handles most of the tech stuff, except none of the social media. Thanks, Austin.
I have a flip phone. What do you want me to do?
And then he does reading, and then he asks his questions based off the reading. So that way, I think it allows us to embrace more of the student dynamic in it.
Yeah.
So then, whereas with me, I would say it varies on the topic, but I would say on average, I'm doing about 6 to 8 hours of research per episode that we record.
That's fair. Yeah.
So it's a lot. Please help. Yeah.
It's fun, but it's a lot of work on top of your full-time job and everything. I mean, I also edit these, so it's not like I don't do anything. I edit audio.
Yeah. Okay, and we're gonna finish off with this one. So if you could pair Plato's Republic with one novel, one film, one novel and one film and one video game. So we have to do 3.
Oh man.
Which ones and why? If you could pair Plato's Republic with one novel and one film and one video game, which one and why? Woo boy. I would pair The Republic with The Republic by Plato. That would be the novel I picked. Well, obviously he said he specified fiction. So
okay.
I'm not allowed to say that.
Let me think for a while.
For a while.
Okay. The Matrix is probably the movie I would go with, just because of the similarity between the allegory of the cave about, truth being a light, and we're currently living in some sort of deceptive environment, and it's our job to break the shackles and move up towards enlightenment, and it's a painful process, but once we get there, we'll have a better idea of the forms and who we are and the nature of reality. And the first Matrix is definitely, it's like a Gnostic gospel meets Plato's allegory of the cave. So just for that reason alone, for that little snippet, I think that's the best I could do for what you might call a companion piece to go with the Republic for the cinemas. Or literature, I have to keep thinking.
Yeah, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to lock down a literature one necessarily. Because again, there's so much in the Republic that I'm like, well, what part do I want to emphasize? Because there may be a book that may emphasize one part but not another of it, and I don't know if there's any book that would be comprehensive enough to cover the entirety of Plato's Republic.
I mean, the basic his views on education, we would say, literature, Brave New World. I know that's kind of aggressive, but because the Brave New World's education was based on sex and like
repeating like jingles and things like that.
Right.
And
It was
like,
more
Plato would
conditioning.
detest that. Yeah, more conditioning.
But the idea of, I guess, just the censoring certain books that are seen as wrong, deemed as not encouraging certain desirables, which for Plato are the virtues, and for what was his name, Mustafa Mons, like were.
I will say this actually. I don't know how much I do. I will say this about. I guess this is kind of cheating because it's a TV show, but it was also a movie. Like they did a movie, Doctor Who.
Oh,
I
yes.
think
Tell us.
like the Doctor and Doctor Who, which is a British sci-fi television show, it's been on.
They better know what that is.
I hope they would. And so the Doctor, who's the main character, his home planet being Gallifrey, and I think the home planet of Gallifrey, and the dynamics of Gallifrey and what the Doctor deals with there is very much symbolic of the Republic. Like you have the Lord President and the Time Council that rules over, and they're the most wise because they've seen into the time vortex and they can time travel and they can regenerate, and they're the philosopher kings and they live for thousands of years and they sit on high in this council. And then they have this like religious sect, which is the I forget what they're called. And so they're like this like religious sect that they go to for like prophecy and things like that. So Plato talks about that. And then you have this warrior class that is like chained to the Lord President and his council, and they have the best technology and they wear all this armor and they go around and they're able to, fight other people. And then you have all these other base people who basically just live on farms and live their daily lives. And I'm like, wow, the societal structure of Gallifrey reminds me a lot of the Republic and what you see there. So I would say that's probably my answer for the TV show one. The novel one, or the movie, I should say. And you have your answer for your movie, and then
I'm gonna stick with Brave New World for my literature. Again,
I'm just not. I
obscure,
can't.
but
I don't know. I can't pick. Video game though.
Oh gosh. I think there could be some similarities drawn between Assassin's Creed, the series as a whole, and the Republic.
Yeah.
Obviously, the main characters are more about chaos is such a mean way to put it, but freedom. And the Templars are more, I think peace and harmony will come through an ordering of sorts. You know the lore, I think, better than I do, but at least from the games I played and the ones I did, I played pretty thoroughly. I think the ordering spirit of the Templars in trying to build this utopia on Earth is kind of similar to what.
Yeah, and so you throw in all the whack alien stuff, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that came later. I didn't really play those ones as much.
I was gonna say Halo.
Really?
Yeah.
You played Halo? I didn't know that.
I think of the Covenant and like the prophets and like how the elite and you have
the elites, the brutes,
well, I mean, just not even getting into the brutes are their own race, but like the Covenant, like they, you have the wise philosophers and who take on a more religious bent, but they sit and they command the Covenant, and the Covenant is like a group of all these other races, but like you have like your grunts and then you have your elites who are the conditioned warriors, and they have a whole centered, focused purpose, and they're unified and they're moving towards that purpose. And I mean, even if you look at the people, the UNSC is like in control of everything pretty much. And then what Master Chief is kind of like a blunt instrument that you point in any direction and he just kills it. Kind of. I mean, he thinks more than that. But I mean, I thought of Halo right off the bat when I'm thinking about the Republic.
That's a cool comparison. Yeah. Nobody out there doubt the depth of Halo's lore. It is a shoot 'em up game, but there's a lot.
Oh yeah, there's a lot there.
A lot going on especially if you have the time to get into the books and or aka the Wikipedia pages.
And I think that's about all of our questions. Yep. So there you have it. If you didn't get see your question answered, or if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I want to ask them a question, well, feel free to email us at theacademypodcast@outlook.com. or get to know us personally, and you can shoot us a message over on Twitter or on Instagram, and we'll be sure to add your question in.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you in our next session.
All right.
Cool.